Hello, Scruff-tards. Welcome to Scruffy Tales. I'm Scruffy. This is the War Zone. Yada yada yada. Uh, Another quick one. I got I got a question on the community section. When are you gonna make your map updates? It's coming. I'm just a bit busy this weekend. But I'll probably get around to it tomorrow or the next day. Anyway, I figured I would make a video talking about this has been popping up of late as Ukraine was beginning to fall back out of Kursk, that Ukraine suffered 70,000 casualties in Kursk. Horrific numbers, more than likely provided by Russia, but it's because it's only Vatniks, the pro-Russians, that are claiming it. And I figured that gives us an indication of what is going on, or what was going on in Kursk, simply based on Russian propaganda. So let's explore. They say 70,000 dead Ukrainians. Highly unlikely, because for every dead soldier, you will at least have 3 or 4 wounded, right? So 70,000 dead, 3 times that, 4 times that wounded, and then all the troops that weren't hit at all by anything. I mean, it's a huge number of troops. So it's not 70,000 dead. Casualties, dead and wounded, maybe. So let's say it's 70,000 dead and wounded Ukrainians in Kursk. And let's go with a pro-Russian narrative that Ukraine suffered catastrophic losses, 50%, because 50% is catastrophic. 10 to 20% is really bad. Really bad if you have a 10 to 20% casualty rate. But 50, catastrophic. So that means in total, over time, Ukraine deployed 140,000 troops to Kursk. And 140,000 troops over time that Russia had to push out. And when you attack, you strive to have superior numbers. So because if you outnumber the enemy, you can outmaneuver him, and you also outgun him. If you outnumber him, you have more guns. So outnumber him, outmaneuver him, outgun him, right? So usually you want a 3-to-1 advantage, but at least 2-to-1, right? So you don't go in fighting the enemy in uneven fight. It's not even an uneven fight, because if you're defending, you have the advantage. That's why you also need more troops, because you're going to take casualties trying to push the defenders out of their position. So you need at least 3-to-1. Against prepared defenses, 5-to-1. In an urban environment, 10-to-1. But at minimum 2-to-1. So if the Ukrainians had 140,000 troops in Kursk, does that mean Russia deployed 280,000 troops to Kursk to push the Ukrainians out? Doesn't seem right, does it? But it's all based on the 70,000 casualties that the Russians are claiming Ukraine suffered in Kursk. So the Russian narrative suggests that Russia deployed almost 300,000 troops to Kursk, which actually could explain why Russia did so bad, so poorly, moving from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk, because throughout 2024, the entire year, when Russia was moving from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk, they barely conquered an area the size of Luxembourg in 12 months. It was longer before that, because the attack on Avdiivka began in 2023, so it's more like 14 months, or maybe even 15 months. But 12 months throughout 2024, Russia conquered barely an area the size of Luxembourg. To compare, when Germany invaded Belgium in World War II, In 20 days, Germany conquered Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands, plus defeated the French and the British army in Belgium in 20 days. And the Russians struggled for an entire year to conquer an area the size of tiny, tiny, tiny Luxembourg. And I mean, it probably, maybe that is because they had 300,000 troops fighting up in Kursk, in an area that was half of Luxembourg. Is it? I think it was barely half of Luxembourg, the area that Ukraine took control over. So it's so ridiculous. No, Ukraine did not lose 70,000 casualties in Kursk. 10 to 15,000 seems reasonable when we're talking Ukrainian losses. And the Ukrainian number is around 38 to 40,000 Russians that lost their lives in 2024. We should add Russian casualties now in 2025 to that. Seems more reasonable, right? Ukraine invades with 10 to 20,000 troops. Russia responds with roughly 50 to 60,000. Remember, you want double or 3-to-1 advantage at least. And they maintain these figures throughout the Kursk campaign. And Russia loses roughly 40% of that, according to Ukrainians. Say Ukraine loses catastrophic 50%, then they lose 10 to 15,000, something like that, right? So it just makes more sense, right? The Ukrainian numbers than the bullshit that Russia keeps spreading, right? Anyway, that's going to have to be it. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.